Well, hey, howdy, hi! Welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for stopping by to join me today. I really do appreciate it. My name is Ellie, and I'm a witch, and today I'm going to be talking to you about another book. This one is Bad Date by Ellery Lloyd. So this is another novella, and this one I didn't realize I actually had as an Amazon first read, so that was fun. This one is a little bit longer than Perfect Modern Wife at 58 pages. Now, this is actually by a husband and wife duo of Colette Lyons and Paul Vitlos, using the pen name Ellery Lloyd. As usual, let's start with the synopsis. Faye Roper is a divorced single mom and a globally famous actress. She's also unlucky in love. Maybe because the last thing Faye wants in a man is yet another superfan. But somehow, every time she has a boyfriend who isn't a stalker, he abruptly disappears from her life. With the help of her best friend and right-hand woman, Poppy, Faye decides to change the game and join an exclusive dating app under a false identity. A subscriber named Oliver takes the bait. But Oliver likes to play games too, and only one of them can win. So this was published September 1st of this year, but it doesn't have the most favorable reviews so far, but I'm not gonna let that shade my review of the book, so let's talk about it. Also, full spoiler warning since I keep forgetting to add that to my reviews up to this point. So we start the book with a podcast hosted by Faye and Poppy. Now, Faye is famous and Poppy is her best friend. They lay out the basics in this section. Faye recently joined an exclusive dating app just for celebrities, but her type is normies, and well, they aren't on the app, so she's kind of lamenting that. The only notable bit in this whole thing is one that I have a big problem with. Faye, I know, right? It's not very feminist to admit I want a man, but those tabloid headlines about me being famously unlucky in love aren't wrong, are they? Can authors please learn the meaning of feminism? Because this is just obnoxiously wrong. Feminism is not saying that you can't want certain things in a relationship. It is giving the women a choice to be in a type of relationship that they want. Do you want to be a trad wife? Do you want to remain childless? Do you want to not date at all? You are allowed to want any of those things. Feminism is literally just allowing women to have the choices to not be a stay-at-home mother if they don't want to. Anyway, Chapter 1 is from Poppy's point of view, and it has a bit of unnecessary information, like physical descriptions, which honestly I've kind of come to like less and less as I grow up. If it isn't relevant to the story, it is not my priority, and it gives more room for the imagination into the characters. We do learn that Faye is bankrupt and is being evicted from her mansion, and that she stopped getting acting roles for some reason. She is flat broke, but is going to a television award show. For what reason it is important, it doesn't say yet, but Poppy says it is really important. She then has a first date. She will actually be sneaking out of the award show to attend that date. Poppy also alludes to Faye having committed some kind of serious crime and that she needs constant alibis for some reason. Chapter 2 is from Ollie's point of view, and he is the one who actually matched with Faye under the name Francesca on the dating app. He calls it an instant connection since they matched so quickly. He is at the restaurant, very nervous but excited. He sees her walk through the door and immediately thinks it's love at first sight. They have some casual first date conversation. Personally, I feel zero chemistry from them, but she's giggling a lot at nothing. She accidentally spills her wine on him, so he goes to the bathroom to clean up. We learn that he is a phony. He made sure to purchase clothes and shoes he can't afford to impress her, and is planning on returning them. He also lied about what he does, and he made up a whole fake company to tell her about. We also get this when he returns to the date. I'll save that for the second date, perhaps. This one seems to be going so well, another seems at this point inevitable. Where do you live, Francesca? I ask, as apropos of nothing, she smiles sweetly at me again. I pretend not to notice that she has a fleck of green something on one of her front teeth, just as I pretend I do not already know the answer to the question I have just asked. Just as, all evening, I have been pretending to not know that it is Faye Roper who is sitting across the table from me. Chapter 3 is in Faye's perspective, and so they are standing on the sidewalk after the date, waiting for her Uber, which is actually just Poppy. Ollie leans in to kiss her, and she braces for it, clearly not wanting him to kiss her, though he's clearly oblivious and kisses her. How long has he been dreaming of this moment? It must have been years, decades perhaps. And this confused me in the moment because he isn't supposed to know who she is, like that's literally the whole point. So she doesn't know he knows, but she thinks that he's been waiting literal decades to kiss her. Anyways, moving along. Poppy pulls up and Faye quickly gets into the car. Jesus Christ, Poppy, my skin is crawling. Take me home. I need a shower immediately. Did you get his key? She demands. Yes, boss, I say. Chucked a glass of wine at him and swiped it from his jacket pocket when he went to the loo. There was a knife in his pocket, I continue with a shudder. A fucking knife. Just a Swiss Army knife, but still. Pops, are you absolutely sure this is safe? That this is going to work? Poppy seems to be the ringleader between the two of them. Poppy has been messaging Ollie on Rhea as Francesca on an unregistered iPhone linked to fake social media accounts she's curated just for this purpose. After an evening of watching him staring at me through bright green contact lenses in this hideous salmon pink t-shirt, twitching his puny pecs and holding his tummy in, I'm honestly not sure if I can face writing the messages myself. No, it has to be you from now on, Poppy says firmly. Text him and remember to sign off Francesca, not Faye. We don't want your real name anywhere near this. Set the next date, a walk in the woods. Make sure it sounds romantic. Meeting your dog, kicking fallen leaves in the winter sun. Chapter 4 is in Poppy's perspective as she is driving Faye home. She's giving us a little bit of exposition about the property itself. It is a very secure property with a panic room, bunker, and an electrified fence. She bought the house virtually sight unseen after her son, Wolf, came home from his supposedly super safe nursery with a note in his jacket that made very specific threats to both Faye and Wolf. Tonight's date was the first step towards ensuring we've dealt with her even more pressing problems before they packed their bags for good. So I wasn't sure what to make of this. Do they know something about Ollie, or are they serial criminals? Wolf is apparently something else. Very aggressive and likes to lift weights, so dangerous on top of being angry. He apparently gets this all from his father, who was almost 40 when he married 18-year-old Faye. Apparently, he was an alcoholic hard man. Faye fled with Wolf when he was just 6 months old after Danny, the husband, became violent. She ended up serving him divorce papers from England, and they lived in the States at the time. Chapter 5 is back in Ollie's perspective. He's on his way home when he gets the text for their next date. He knows that this is her secret phone number, which he feels very special about having, but he also knows her real phone number. He says that there's no way that she doesn't know that he knows, given how famous she is, or was. He starts to reply to her message, but isn't too sure what to say. I abandon my reply to Faye for now and open my email instead. There's one photographer, an old paparazzo, who lurks on the Faye fan site, fish finger tips on who she's dating, where he might catch them together. He's had some good leads from us before. More often than not, his name is the one credited on those long lens shots you see on the Daily Mail website. I type his address into the to-bar, subject line, tip-off. It will appear as if sent anonymously from a jumble of random letters and numbers. I have intel that Faye Roper and her new man will be having a romantic stroll at 2 p.m. this Saturday in the grounds of Stelhurst Abbey. It won't hurt, I think, to make our relationship public sooner rather than later. It will inevitably come out at some point. He does more than just tip off Paps, though. I can tell you a lot about her son, Wolf, too. The boy can be very guarded. I really think he needs a father figure in his life. A proper one. That's what I've been providing from a distance for these past couple of years. He's had a lot to contend with, not least those awful men, all wrong for his mother, hanging around constantly. I've helped him deal with them. Really, we've both just been protecting her, making sure she gets her happy ever after. So we learned that Ollie has been writing to Faye for years, DMing her, anything to try to get her attention, but obviously that doesn't work when it comes to celebrities. We also learned that he has been talking to Wolf, and not just talking to him, pretending to be his dad. And he actually talks to Wolf that night. He's been feeding him lies about how Faye and his dad had broken up and saying that they'll all be a family again soon, but it's going to take time, and that Wolf needs to leave this newest date alone, though he doesn't really explain why. Quick intermission to go back to the podcast, where Faye tells her listeners that she is moving, and that's literally it. Chapter 6 is back in Poppy's point of view. She talks about how awful being stalked is, how it destroys life, and how it has affected Faye. Often they claim to be in love with Faye. Some even insist it's reciprocal. But they don't seem to care about the stress they cause her. They don't stop when you ask them to, when you tell them she's scared, that she's not eating, not sleeping, that she's scared for her son's life. They don't stop when lawyers send letters. They don't stop when police tell them to. They're never subtle, these guys. Not very bright either, most of them. Some even use their own names, or at least reuse the same fake name across accounts. Podcast reviews, social media, one-star fake vet reviews, online Mortal Kombat. That's how I identified Oliver Sharp. Chapter 7 is in Faye's point of view, and this is where they go on their second date in the park. Wolf actually ends up being dragged along because Faye got a little bit freaked out last minute, but he's just playing with their dog King. Poppy is flying a drone overhead to keep an eye on everything as well. Faye leads him to a bench with a nice view and offers him the meal that she had packed them. He starts talking about his job while she doesn't pay attention to anything he's saying. When he's finished, he just straight up litters, but she picks it up and puts it in her bag. Chapter 8 is in Poppy's point of view. Now, she is flying a drone, keeping an eye on Wolf too, since he's very unpredictable. She ends up seeing the known paparazzi, which is not good for the plan, so she flies the drone right into him. Chapter 9 is back in Faye's perspective, and she gets a text from Poppy telling them to move away from the area. So Faye quickly drags Ollie towards Wolf. She tells him not to say it's a date since Wolf can get very jealous of any men in her life. She thinks about all the interviewers who have tried to pry into her love life and how she's avoided that topic, especially when it came to boyfriends who would suddenly disappear from her life. That wasn't always a lie. I didn't actually know why for a long time, but I did know how. Theo came first. He was a tree surgeon, and so the first time I ever saw him, he was shirtless in my back garden. Things progressed quickly, by which I mean that he was shirtless in my bedroom within hours, but also that we were inseparable within weeks. I could really see a future for us, but I made him promise to keep the relationship secret, and we did manage to hide his existence from the media, although Poppy told me that the fan sites were quickly buzzing with the gossip. There were a few happy months before I made the mistake of letting him with Wolf, aged 12 then, one night after the babysitter canceled last minute. I thought Theo and he got along just fine and didn't see any reason to worry. Theo said Wolf had been no bother at all and that he didn't really see him as he spent the entire night upstairs gaming in his room. But then I never heard from Theo again, despite calling and texting. When I asked Wolf about it, he just shrugged. I never liked him anyway, he said. It wasn't until the local paper landed on the doorstep that I realized the reason for Theo's radio silence. A mile or so from my house, his van brakes had failed on a slippery bend. He hit a tree at 65 miles per hour and was killed instantly. I left the newspaper sitting on the kitchen table. The smirk when Wolf read the headline was unmistakable. Wolf was 13 when we lost James. He could have been the one, which was why, when people find out we were dating, after a few months together, I'd let my guard down and we'd been photographed by a long lens while we were walking hand in hand through Soho, I thought it was a sign. He was a yoga teacher, originally from Australia, and because he existed on quinoa and kale, he was useless with alcohol. I knew that, which makes me feel like it was partly my fault. While Wolf was at school, we spent the afternoon together at my house drinking champagne, getting tipsy. When Wolf came home, he sat with us for a sullen few minutes, then stomped up to his room. I left James in the swimming pool. I went for a shower to freshen up for dinner. 20 minutes later, when I returned, James was floating face down, Wolf nowhere to be seen. I told myself it must have been an accident. Then I saw the pool skimmer, the long pole with a blue net at the end of it, not where I'd left it on its hook on the wall, but laying on the tiles, dripping wet. Then I noticed a small bottle of GHB, a drug that when I later Googled, I realized was probably bought on the dark web, presumably leaving a trail which could lead back to my son, in the waste paper basket. I could not make excuses for murder, especially not when it happened a third time. Kieran was a really hard loss to take, as we'd already started talking about moving in together, where we might get married. The question that faced me was what to do with his body. I could have called the police, I suppose, told them my suspicions, handed over my son to the criminal justice system, sacrificed my life, my career. I did not. Instead, I bought another suitcase. Chapter 10 is in Poppy's point of view, and she is currently taking a suitcase out of the trunk and thanking Faye internally for picking wheelie suitcases. A hot chocolate and a stroll on the South Bank, a firework display, a picnic in the park, that was as many as Faye could stomach, and really all we had time for. Then the stage was set. I tried to imagine how much harder my task would be now if Danny Stone hadn't put Faye off beefy men forever. The fact she likes them weedy is the only reason I'm able to even try this suitcase maneuver. The first body is already at the bottom of Oliver's pond, a slick green algae instantly swallowing it. It was easy enough to get into Oliver's flat with the key Faye swiped on that first date, but thankfully I'm done inside now, having planted a few of her personal effects, as well as the empty bottle of GHB that this lunatic helped Wolf procure. A manual for the white van of the same make that Theo drove was a nice touch, I thought, with stickies on the pages about the braking system. Just this second trip to the bottom of the neglected garden to go now, having left the back gate ajar for myself, the overgrown trees keeping me hidden, I hope, from the upstairs neighbor. Inside the apartment is just filled with Faye's memorabilia, and that makes Poppy very uncomfortable, of course. From the grin on his face, you'd think it was Christmas. He looked ridiculous, of course. The dyed hair, the stubble, the cool clothes that didn't suit him. None of it managed to disguise the man that I'd sat opposite from, giving evidence of every creepy thing he'd done, all logged and detailed and watched as the county court judge handed him a restraining order twice. Perhaps he presumed that because Faye couldn't face attending court herself, she wouldn't recognize him. Perhaps he thought his disguise was foolproof. I'd know that face anywhere, though. Gotcha, I think, when he popped up on Rhea, as I knew he would once we mentioned it on the podcast. So they found out that Wolf was talking to Oliver when a lawyer sent Faye a notice that Wolf needed to stop sending his father letters about how they would be a family again, since it violated the court agreement. At that point, they installed a spy software on his computer and started to get their evidence that Oliver was talking to Wolf, pretending to be his father. Chapter 11 is in Ollie's perspective, and he is excited to go on a small vacation with Faye and is hoping she will finally tell him who she is. He's also starting to let Wolf down easy by essentially just ghosting him, since Ollie considers himself his new father, of course. Faye isn't in, though, whenever he shows up, so Wolf ends up letting him in. Wolf is lifting weights and asked Ollie what he lifts, and Wolf tells him to put his money where his mouth is, essentially. Wolf can bench much more, and he doesn't remove any of the weights when Ollie lays down, and Wolf just releases the bar onto Ollie's throat. He tells Ollie that he knows him and his mom are dating, but that he refuses to see his mom get hurt again. Chapter 12 is in Faye's perspective. She comes home but realizes that Ollie is there, 30 minutes early. She quickly drops the trash from the park with his fingerprints and DNA on it by a gap in the fence. She then breaks a window before she sees Wolf standing over him. Ollie is seemingly dead. He isn't, though, and Wolf releases him from the weights. Wolf, panic room, now, I bark. He does a confused double take and then complies, running towards me. I grab his hand and we start off down the corridor. King, intruder, I yell behind me and can hear Oliver's indignant yell as the dog launches himself at him. The door to the panic room closed behind us, drowning out the sound of every alarm in the place going off. As locked clicks audibly in place, I fix Wolf with a hard stare and put my hand on his shoulders. I know what you've done. That man out there, he is the one who made you do it all. He's been pretending to be your father. When the police come, we will say we have never seen him before, that he broke in, and it is probably not the first time. He will start ranting and raving about being my boyfriend, I'm sure, but he will not be able to produce a shred of evidence of a single date, and I'll be able to prove I was elsewhere for each and every one. I have done this for you, but this is the end of it, Wolf. Do you hear me? Do you understand? Wolf nods mutely, eyes wide. I dial 999, summoning acting skills several big-name directors would argue I don't possess, and say over the sound of my pounding heart, Police, please, come quickly. A stalker has broken into my home, and I'm certain he's capable of murder. And that's the book. Most of the reviews on Goodreads are like 3 stars, and I agree with that. It wasn't bad, but the ending was just a flop for me. I like novellas, been getting a lot more into them, but to have a book just end abruptly is annoying, and I'm not a fan. It was also just weird. It was certainly predictable, but with a few twists. I think that the shorter the book is, the harder it is to create a good, compelling story. And people who can write fantastic flash fiction have my admiration. It is a feat, truly, to fit a full story in less than 60 pages, and some do it well, but most of the time the story just feels rushed, and if it was a novel, then it would be given more time to breathe and wouldn't feel so over the top and unrealistic. With that said, while I would have loved for Perfect Modern Wife to be a full novel, I don't think that this works in the same way. I wouldn't want to read this as a novel from these authors. Their writing style just isn't my cup of tea, and for this particular story, I'm just not invested enough. A lot of the reviews mention that the reason they aren't rating it even lower is because it was free on Amazon's first read, which is obviously how I got it too. I don't think that affects my personal view on a book since A, I have a constant source of free books through ARCs, and B, free or not, I always will pick a book that I think I will enjoy and that seems like a fun read. I do totally understand that it could affect your opinion or review as you feel you'd be a little bit more grateful, I guess. Overall, I don't really recommend this book, but it's certainly not the worst book I've ever read. And that is all that I have for you today. This one was interesting. I completely forgot that I got it for an Amazon first read, but whenever I was going through all my books to try and find anything, I was actually going through to find Christmas books, I'll be honest, and then I found this, like, okay, that's perfect. But I completely forgot I had it. But it was, okay, for being a free novelette, or novella, whichever one you want to consider it, okay, like, I would be like unhappy if I ended up picking like this as a novel for an Amazon first read, but like that would feel a lot more wasteful than me just getting this as a short story. I am also going to be changing. I have absolutely no idea what day this is. Day 9 or 10, I think, for my series. Maybe even 11. I have no idea where I am any day of the week. Anyways, so this is going to go out, the next video that you'll see from me is going to be another reading Nook video, but I did say that I wanted to read I Found the Boogeyman Beneath My Brother's Crib, I think is the name of it, by Ben Farthing. I was about to start reading it, and that first page I was like, no thanks. So I was like, okay, let's find a different one. And I found, I think it's Ride or Die. I'll put it on the screen, I have absolutely no idea. I opened that one, and then I got a message on Goodreads from an author. Said author reached out and said that they liked my reviews, which is fantastic, and they offered me ARCs of their books on Book Siren, which is the website that I use for my ARCs. And I was like, okay, that's cool, you know, whatever. So I look into it, and they have 2 books published this year. They have Getaway Lodge, The 14th Floor, and The Flayed Bleeding Hearts. I literally read this today. I don't know what's wrong with me. Anyway, so they have those available, and I was like, okay, we'll see. They're both novelettes. And I was like, okay, cool, you know, we'll look into it. That is ideal. It was perfect timing because they're very, very short. Like, I think combined they're still shorter than the Ben Farthing one. I was like, okay, cool, so I'll get into it. And the author, you know, reached out personally. I was like, that's fantastic. So I got their permission to actually review them on my channel. And so they're going to see that, which is kind of terrifying. But no, I think the writing is amazing. I'll talk about that more. But I got this author's explicit permission to do the review. But with that, I'm also they told me to ask them any questions if I wanted to know anything about the writing process, about the books. I have a few questions, probably going to find out a couple of more, but I'm going to ask them the questions, and then at the end of the video tomorrow I will be giving you all the answers that they gave me. I know a couple are just going to be like very broad questions, but some of them are going to be very specific to the stories, so that's why I'm putting them at the end. But yeah, I have 98% of that script written already because I was just so invested in the books, but I will talk about that more tomorrow. But yeah, so other than that, I don't really have much to tell you. I didn't hate this book, I didn't love it. It was just, it put a lot of, I guess, foreshadowing, but to do that well, you can't just leave somebody confused. Like, obviously, like, as you go through, like, looking back, like, oh, okay, so they were planting all these seeds, but in the moment it didn't make sense. Like, foreshadowing still needs to make sense in the moment. But yeah, so that was the book. That was my review. If you guys want to like and subscribe, that would be fantastic. I really appreciate that. Maybe comment. Coming up, I don't know if I'll mention it tomorrow. I'll mention it now. I am going to do more books in November and more in December. I've already picked out all of the December books, which I may or may not reveal if I feel like it. But for November, I kind of wanted, like, books that feel like November, but aren't necessarily set in November. And I'm not sure if I want to do, like, fall ones, if I want to do, like, romancy ones. Like, I have, like, a couple of video ideas, but if you guys have any suggestions for those books before November starts, please let me know, because I am open to pretty much anything. But, yeah, this is far too long for such a short book. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you guys tomorrow for my next review. But I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I will see you next time. Bye.